So I just got back from watching Kubo and the Two Strings, and it's really good. But I want to save that review for a different video because it's raised a bit of a controversy, the controversy of whitewashing. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about whitewashing because it really hits home for me. So this video is going to be a little bit different from my other ones because it's a little bit more serious. I want to tell you a little bit about my personal experiences with whitewashing. So I want to split this video up into 3 different topics. 1, what is whitewashing and what are some examples? 2, why does whitewashing exist? Why do I think that whitewashing is still around today? And 3, what are some of my personal experiences that I've had living in Los Angeles? So what is whitewashing? Whitewashing is when you have an ethnic character and you have them portrayed by a white person in TV, film, or some other form of media. A perfect example of this is in the 1961 film Breakfast at Tiffany's. Mickey Rooney plays a character in this movie called Mr. Yunioshi. Mr. Yunioshi is this character right here. Buck teeth, slanty eyes, horrible accent. I mean, really?
Mr. Go right someday, Mr. Go right.
Mickey Rooney later said before he died that he was devastated by the horrible reaction to his portrayal, but I mean, can you be surprised? Now, if you want to make an apples-to-apples comparison with this, let's talk about a different ethnicity. Let's talk about blackface. Now, blackface was when a white actor used to blacken up their face to play an African American. And it was horrible. Just horrible.
Mammy, the sun shines east, the sun shines west, but I know where the sun shines best.
In fact, it was so horrible that they stopped in the 1940s because it was just incredibly racist. It's probably one of the most racist things ever. Now here's the problem. Breakfast at Tiffany's happened in 1961. So, where it was bad to portray one ethnicity in such a terrible way, why was it okay to portray a different one in an equally terrible way? And this is part of the problem. Why it's not okay to do this with one race, but it seems to be okay with Asian Americans. Because honestly, that was an Asian version of blackface. It's equally as horrible. Another example in the 70s, the TV show Kung Fu, where David Carradine plays a Chinese man. Rumor has it that Bruce Lee actually created Kung Fu, but apparently he was too Asian to play an Asian. But hey, you know what, Paul? That was in the past. We were horribly racist back then. It's not like that today. Well, did you see Avatar: The Last Airbender where Aang was played by Noah Randall? Aang, played by Noah Randall. So the really interesting part of this is that the director was M. Night Shyamalan, who himself is Asian, but for some reason he decided to go with white people. Which brings me to an issue I'll hit on later, is when Asians are successful, for some reason they don't want to help each other out, they're just glad to be there. Other examples from the last couple of years are the movie Aloha, where Emma Stone plays the character Allison Ng. You know, she kind of looks like an Allison Ng. The character is supposed to be Hawaiian, I mean, why not? The upcoming Ghost in the Shell, where the Japanese Motoko Kusanagi is played by who else? Scarlett Johansson. How about Doctor Strange, where Tilda Swinton plays the Ancient One, who's supposed to be from Tibet. Then there's always the Iron Fist controversy on Netflix, which is the Marvel property, that Iron Fist is actually now white. There's also another Netflix series, which I forget the name of, which they cast a white kid to play a Korean American. So that role's white now. Thank you so much, Netflix. Which brings us back to Kubo and the Two Strings, where the mostly Asian cast is played by mostly white people. Hey Paul, who cares? Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I mean, if you think that, then this is part of the problem. What would you think if Luke Cage, the African-American comic book character, which has his own show on Netflix now, what if they decided to make him white? Is that crazy? Of course it's crazy. Or how about if Black Panther and his whole entire family were played by white people? Is that racist and insensitive? Yes. Would most people have a problem with that? Absolutely. If that's not acceptable, then why is it acceptable to replace all these Asian characters with white characters? There's a double standard there, and this is part of the problem. It's the Mr. Yunioshi problem all over again. Can't do blackface, but it's okay for Mickey Rooney to put in some buck teeth. And in a culture where everyone's talking about diversity and acceptance, it's really weird that they've taken a lot of white male roles and given them to other ethnicities and women. Jimmy Olsen on Supergirl, Nick Fury in The Avengers, Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four. But not only do they never cast an Asian in a typically white role, but the few roles there are for Asians are taken away from us. And again, if you're not bothered by that, you're part of the problem. So topic number 2, why? Why are Asian Americans not cast in Hollywood? So this is the part where I'm going to say what I think, and I might offend some of you, so I apologize for offending you, but look, I'm not sorry for what I'm saying. First reason is the writers, directors, and producers. They're all old. They come from a generation where racism is kind of okay, and in many ways the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So certain groups are more vocal. In general, is that Asians like to fly under the radar. They don't like to make waves. They don't like to rock the boat. Unfortunately, if the squeaky wheel gets the grease, in this case, that wheel's just hobbling along, not getting any grease, and just limping through. Another reason for lack of Asian Americans in Hollywood is studios try to bring stars who are already established overseas and bring them to the United States, like Chow Yun-fat, like Rain. Problem is that they never took off, and why should they? They don't even speak English very well. Imagine if Brad Pitt went to Brazil and tried to be a big star. Well, he probably would still be a star. He's Brad Pitt. But you see what I'm saying. They don't even speak English. How are they going to act? Not to mention the fact that nobody has any idea who they are in the United States, so there's zero box office draw. What the studios need to do is find American Asian actors, start raising them up, get them in the public consciousness, so there's not just some random dude from another country who barely speaks English in our films and we don't know who this person is. Next reason, and this is really going to hurt for some of you, most Asian American actors are not actors, and they're really terrible. I know. I was in a community of all these people, and guess what? Most of them were accountants, lawyers, cops. They just decided, I live in Los Angeles, I'm reasonably attractive, I'm going to be an actor. The problem is, they're terrible. Of course they're terrible, they're not trained. So this causes a big problem because it perpetuates the myth that there are no good Asian actors in Hollywood. Look, I don't mean to crush your dreams, but if you're trained as an accountant, please go be an accountant. You're actually ruining it for the rest of us. Last big reason is, there's a myth that Asian American males aren't attractive. So there's a video I watched recently, I'm going to put the link down below. It says, why aren't Asian men sexy? And then it goes through all the stereotypes in the media that make people think Asian guys are not attractive. Because the media portrays us like this, and like this. The other issue that goes with this is that overseas, Asian stars tend to be pretty androgynous. The problem is that's not popular in the United States. When you have stars who are more manly like The Rock, Hugh Jackman, Vin Diesel, when it's popular to grow a beard and get your pump on and get swole, the thin, wafy, androgynous look just doesn't do it. And there are plenty of us who don't fit that stereotype, but the media wants to portray us a certain way here in the United States. I should just buy a pair of buck teeth. So the third thing is, I want to tell you about some of my personal experiences, and I'm going to be a little bit lucid with you. I went to school for theater, music, and dance. I grew up in the arts and actually have my degree. I performed all over the world. Some highlights are, I was in Equus with George Takei from Star Trek. Here's a picture of me, him, and Nichelle Nichols. I was in The Pajama Game with Broadway legend John Raitt. He's Bonnie Raitt's father. I was Freddie in My Fair Lady. I even choreographed that show. I've performed with the Stuttgart Ballet. I've been in music videos. I've even done 2 USO tours performing for our troops overseas. The live performance space is much more diverse and wide open ethnically, as it should be. So I come to Los Angeles with a good amount of success, and suddenly, guess what? There are no roles for me. I never realized how Asian I am until I moved to Los Angeles. And what I mean is not that I act Asian, but everyone in the industry, all they saw was an Asian guy. Which means that I could never be a lead. I'd always have to be supporting. I remember Margaret Cho telling a story about how when she was little, she said, you know, if I really work hard and work my craft and become an actress, one day, if I'm really lucky and I work hard, I can be an extra on MASH. And there was some truth to that. In the few roles there are, you have to have a thick Asian accent, you have to do martial arts, and you're either the bad guy or you're the nerd. So let me give you an example from the last 2 weeks. I was just cast in a movie. The character's supposed to weigh 135 pounds, be a nerd, and gets rejected in a long rejection scene by the hot girl. There's literally a one-on-one scene where he's around the girl and she pushes him in the face away from her and she goes, ugh, basically gross. I actually know the director, so I was going to talk to him about changing that particular scene to not perpetuate stereotypes. But then they shifted it to Oregon and they have to hire everybody local, so I never got the role anyways. I guess they found a 135-pound nerdy guy. To further validate my point, last month I was in my friend's office. He's a personal manager in Los Angeles, a pretty big one. And we were discussing this whole racial issue with Asian Americans. He didn't believe me at first. He was like, no, that's not possible. So we went through the breakdowns. For those of you who don't know, the breakdowns are the list of all the auditions and the roles that are coming up through TV and film. So he turned around and went through the breakdowns and scrolled through all the roles. And he was like, huh, accent, huh, martial arts, huh, gangster. He looks at me, he goes, you're right. So I have a friend named Julius Tenen. He's a very good African-American actor, and he's actually married to an incredible African-American actress. Her name's Viola Davis, you probably have heard of her. Julius always talked to me about how he was sick of archetypes, about being portrayed as the pimp, the bad guy, the gangster, and he talked about how there's archetypes for black people. And that's exactly what it is for Asians, except it's much worse. It's basically like the 1960s, and that's not okay. I have a friend, let's call him Steve, and he's a pretty famous African-American actor. He married a really well-known sideline reporter who's also African-American. She was pretty groundbreaking. Steve also was one of the very first African-American models. He modeled for Ebony. His wife, the reporter, she was also one of the first African-American women to ever be in Playboy. So between the two of those people, they broke down a lot of barriers. So when I first moved out to LA, I was playing a lot of music. So Steve is a really good friend, but he's also a very straight shooter. And he heard my stuff and he thought it was good. So he sent it over to a company called They were a very good company at the time for managing musical artists. They had many artists who were in the top 10. So Steve comes by my house one day and he's like, can I talk to you? He sits down and he starts crying. And he told me that the management company had told him, we love this guy. We love his look, we love his voice, we love his music. But we don't want him because he's Asian. He said, Paul, for everything that I have worked for, all the walls that I have tried to break down, I can't believe this SHIT still exists. So I started a band, me and 3 white guys, because maybe they won't take me as a solo artist, but in a band, maybe I can spread my Asianness out a little bit more because there's 3 people who aren't Asian. I started writing and producing and now directing films, and I love it. I just directed my first feature, but I started doing it because there were no opportunities for me in front of the camera. So I'm gonna go back to doing more fun videos, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about my story and my experience with these issues, which are really close to me. Appreciate you guys, love you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Do you find Asian guys sexy?
It was very notable to me when I would see an Asian face on screen, and it never really occurred to me how few there were until I saw one.
I'm an exchange student from Bangalore, India. Well, this is how I roll.
Yeah, short and slow.
The roles have always been scarce and one-dimensional.
People don't get that fired up about racist Asian or Indian stuff.
I tried to whiten myself. I wanted to be very Americanized, and I didn't want that stigma attached to me.